In this demo, we are going to create two Web API applications. Both are protected by Azure AD Authentication and Authorization. Here, one API is client to the other API. We are going to test our changes with Postman tool. Postman will call Operation Agent API and Operation Agent API will call Members Info API and returns the response which is shown over here. Before we start, please subscribe to AzureTeach.net channel for more videos on Azure and .NET. This demo is based on the applications that I have worked on for a US-based healthcare client. Let us understand the use case. We need to understand this diagram from right to left. Here we have Members API. This is an enterprise level API and a central place of storing members information of the client. Members are the people who are insured from the client. If any application needs members information, it has to call this API. Here we have Operations Agent API. This is application level API. That is, it is consumed by the same team who developed the user interface. No other applications access this API. Here we have the user interface. In one of its pages, we are displaying members' basic information and also member agent history. Over the period of time, the members can contact different agents and we are preserving the interaction history and displaying the same on the UI. To access Operations Agent API Get Member Agent History endpoint, the user must have Operations Agent role. And to access Members API Get Member Info endpoint, the user must have Members Read-Only role. So the user must have both of these roles, otherwise this entire flow will not work. Please note that these APIs has other endpoints too, but for our demo, Web API with Azure AD calling another Web API with Azure AD, this information is enough. Let us start with the developing the APIs. In this demo, we are not going to use UI to access the web APIs, but instead we are going to use Postman tool to access them. So here we have two web API applications, so we have to create two app registrations on Azure. Here I am in portal.azure.com and I'm going to Azure Active Directory. Clicking on this add, and here I'm selecting app registration and I'm giving the app name as Operations Agent API app. And here I want to go with the default settings. I'm clicking on register. We need to tell Azure that this app registration is related to an API. So that we can do by going to expose an API. And here we have to set application ID URI. So I'm clicking on set and clicking on save over here. After that, here we have to add a scope and I'm giving the scope name as operations agent.all and I want to choose here admins only. I'm copying this and pasting it over here, and I'm clicking on add scope. Using scopes, we can divide our API into granular pieces and we can give permissions on them. Like if your application has multiple clients and you want to restrict those clients and give certain permissions to certain clients only, you can do that using the scopes. Now go to the default directory and create the second app registration. So here I'm choosing app registration and here I am naming it as Members API app. Click on register. Now again go to expose an API and here click on set, click on save, click on add scope, and here I'm giving the scope name as members API.all, and I'm copying this and pasting it over here. If you want to provide different display name and descriptions, you can do that as well, but I'm copying the same content. Clicking on add scope. If you want to add multiple scopes, you can do that as well. If you have multiple permissions to give on the clients, you can do that. But I'm just adding all over here. And now this members API app is consumed by operations agent API app. So here we have to add that as a client application. So I'm clicking on this add a client application button, and here we have to provide the client ID. Here I'm in Azure Active Directory and going to app registrations. And here going into operations agent API app. And here we can take this client ID and I am pasting it over here, and I'm choosing the scope. If you have multiple scopes, you have to select the appropriate scope that is required for that particular client application. As I have only one, I have chosen that one. Clicking on add application. Now click on app roles and here create an app role. Here I'm giving the role name as members.read-only. I'm copying it. I want this to be assigned to users and groups only. I'm pasting it over here and here and clicking on apply. Now again I am going to operations agent app, going to app roles, and here I'm choosing create app role and giving the role name as operations agent. I'm copying it. I want this to be assigned to users or groups and pasting the value as operations agent over here. Description also the same, clicking on apply. Here I'm creating a new ASP.NET Core Web API project, clicking on next, and here I'm giving the name as members info API, clicking on next. And here I'm choosing .NET 5.0, and if you want to choose a different version, you can do that as well. Clicking on create. Here the project is created. I'm double clicking on this connected services. And here I'm clicking on this plus symbol. And I'm choosing Microsoft Identity Platform. Clicking on next. It has to install this .NET MS Identity tool, and this tool helps the Visual Studio to decide the type of project. So here I'm clicking on finish. Now again we have to click on this plus symbol and go to Microsoft Identity Platform. Click on next. Here it will display all the app registrations. Those are created by the user who is logged into the Visual Studio. We can create the app registrations by clicking on this plus symbol as well, but I don't recommend that approach because if we create like this, we can't assign the role to the users using the enterprise application. So that's the reason we have created the app registrations first on the portal.azure.com and later we are using them over here. So here I'm choosing members API app, clicking on next, and here we are not going to call any other API from this API, so I am not choosing these checkboxes, clicking on next, and here I'm clicking on finish. It will add the code and get packages, and it will update the app settings.json, and also it will update the Azure AD. Clicking on finish button, clicking on close. This step will add the configuration to app settings.json. Here is the configuration related to the Azure AD. And also it will add the code required for adding Azure AD authentication in the startup.cs class. So here if you see, here we have services.add authentication, and here we have add Microsoft Identity Web API, and here it is referring to the config section that it is added over here. We do not need this. We can remove this because it has an overload that takes the configuration, and if you see here we have a default parameter that has the config section name as Azure AD itself. This API has a scope that is members API.all, so you can find that over here. If you build this project, it will not build because here we have the default weather forecast controller and it has these classes, and we do not have these classes in the packages that the Visual Studio added when we configured the Microsoft identity. So what we have to do is we have to upgrade these packages to latest. So here I'm clicking on manage NuGet packages. Let us upgrade these packages. So here I'm choosing this and I'm choosing the latest one which is available for .NET 5. So I'm choosing this, clicking on update, doing the same for this and choosing 5.0.16, clicking on update. And here on Microsoft Identity.web, I'm choosing the latest table one, clicking on update. And for this Microsoft.identity.web.ui also, I'm choosing the latest table one, clicking on update. We can ignore the Swagger related package. Now, if you see, the error is gone. The use of this class is if any client want to access this controller, the client must have this particular scope. Now, let us add one more controller. Add controller API controller empty. Add. I'm naming my controller name as members controller. Now, let us create a model. Right click, add new class. I'm naming my class as member, and here let us add few basic properties. In interest of time, I'm putting the video pause. Here I have added member ID first name and last name and address properties. In real time we'll have so many properties and a complex object structure, but for this demo I'm keeping it simple. For this demo, I do not want to use entity framework, just to keep this demo simple because our primary focus is on Azure AD, not on the entity framework. So here I'm hard coding the members list. So here I'm writing private list members list is equal to press control dot over here and add system.collections.generic new list of member, and here let us add two objects, new member. Here I have added two members to the list, and here I am writing public iAction result get member info. It accepts member ID. Here I'm writing http get, and I want to go with the action name. And after that, here I'm writing member ID because I want to get the member ID from the URI. Here I'm writing where member is equal to members list dot first or default. Press control dot add this namespace. Here I want to use x dot member ID equal to member ID. F member is equal to null. Return not found. Return OK of member. Now let us go to weather forecast controller and copy this and this statement also because we want to use the same scopes. So I'm pasting it over here. Press Ctrl dot for this. Add this namespace and press Ctrl dot over here and add this namespace. And also we have to copy this statement. So I'm going over here and pasting it over here, and here I'm copying this, and here I'm pasting this, and here it should be the scope that we have added. And of course we can read it from the app settings.json, but I'm just hard coding it over here. Now here I'm writing authorize rules is equal to, here I am in members API app registration, copying the role and pasting it over here. That is all. This is what we have to do on the members API. Let us test this using the Postman. I am running this. Before we test this code, let me explain the steps that I have done before. So here we have mentioned the scope that is required for accessing this controller, and we need authorization for this controller, so we have added this authorize attribute. But of course here also we have added, and we can remove that, but for now let us keep it. And here we have added authorize attribute, and we mentioned that if anybody wants to access this action, the user must have members.read-only role. As we are going to test this application using Postman, Postman is our client app, so we have to create an app registration for that. If you are using Angular app or an MVC app, for that also you have to create an app registration, and let us do that now. Here I am in Azure Active Directory. I am clicking on new registration, Postman client app, and here I am clicking on register. App registration is created. Going to authenticate section, add platform, and we have to choose one of these platforms. I am choosing single page application, and here we have to give the redirect URI. As we are going to use Postman tool, we are giving this URI. To access our application from Postman, we have to log in as a user. So once we log in, Azure will return the token, and Postman will look for this particular URL and intercept that HTTP call and take the token and use it for our testing. We need to use the same URL in the Postman as well. So here we have to choose these two checkboxes, clicking on configure. Now go to Postman, and here we have to give the URI. So here I'm going to the API, and it is our base URL. I'm pasting it over here, and after that let me copy this entire thing and paste it over here. And here we have to give the member ID. So here I'm going to the Visual Studio and taking one of the member IDs and going to Postman and giving it over here. Let us test this now. We should get 401 unauthorized. So if you see, we got 401 unauthorized. Now I'm clicking on authorization. Here we have to choose WAUth 2.0, and here it should be request headers. And after that, here we have to give the same URL that we have used for our app registration, and it is already there. And here we have to give the authorization endpoint. So I'm going to the app registration and endpoints. I'm copying this and going to Postman, pasting it over here. And here we have to give the client ID. So we can get the client ID from here, copying it over here and pasting it over here. And we have to mention the scopes. So I'm going to default directory, members API, expose an API, and here is the scope. Copy it and paste it over here. And also we have to add this as a client application. I'm clicking on add a client application, and here we have to give the client ID. So I'm copying the client ID of Postman client app and pasting it over here. I'm choosing this scope, clicking on add application. Now we have to do role assignment to a user. So here I'm going to the default directory and going to enterprise applications, going into members API app, clicking on assign users and groups, add user or group, and here I'm selecting Jessica, clicking on select, and we have only one role, so the same is showing over here. Click on assign. Now I am in Postman, clicking on get new access token. So here it opened the Azure login page. I am logging in as Jessica. It is asking us to open Postman tool. So here we got the token, clicking on proceed, use token, and now here I'm clicking on send. So here we got the response. That means the Azure AD configuration that we have done on this API is working fine. Now here I am creating a new web API for agent operations. So here I am giving the name as operations agent API. Clicking on next. Here I am choosing authentication type as Microsoft Identity Platform. Clicking on create. Here we need to click on finish. Now click on configure over here. It loaded the app registrations and here I'm choosing Operations Agent API app. Click on next and here we are going to access other API from this API. So I'm choosing this, clicking on next, clicking on next, clicking on finish. The process is done. In interest of time, I have already upgraded the packages of this application in the similar fashion that we have done for the first API. If you go to app-settings.json file, here we have the Azure AD configuration, and also as we have added support for calling the downstream API, the Microsoft Identity Platform wizard will create this configuration also. And here we have to mention the scopes of downstream API and also the base URI. And also it adds secrets. So if you go to manage user secrets, if you see here we have a secret and the same secret is configured on operations agents API. And if you go to certificates and secrets, if you see here we have the secret. We need to have this secret to call the downstream API. Now let us go to startup.cs class and here we have to add few more things. Here after add Microsoft Identity Web API, here we have to call enable token acquisition to call downstream API. This will enable the application to preserve the access token of the user and call the downstream API. After that, here we have to write add in-memory token cache as we are going to store the token in memory. And after that, here we have to call add downstream web API. And here we have to give a name to the API. We are going to call members API. So I'm giving the name as members API. And here we have to pass the configuration section of the downstream API. So here I'm giving configuration.get section. And here we have to give this configuration section name and paste it over here. Let us modify some configurations inside app-settings.json. Here I am in operations agent API app. I am going to expose as an API and copying this scope and pasting it over here. And now here we have to pass the base URL of the second API. I am copying the base URL and pasting it over here. After that, here we need to have /API. Now here I am in members API app, expose an API and copying this scope and pasting it over here. Please note that for downstream API we have added entire path of the scope, but here we have added the scope name only. Now here I am adding a new controller API controller empty add. I am naming the controller name as agent controller, and again we have to copy this and paste it over here. Press Ctrl dot, add the required namespaces. Here I'm writing an action method public iAction result get agent member history, and it accepts the member ID. And here we have to add HTTP GET, and I want to go with the action and /member ID as we are going to get the member ID from the URI. Now I am going to weather forecast controller and copying this statement because for this controller also we want to validate the scopes. I'm pasting it over here and going to the top and copying this statement and pasting it over here. Validating against these scopes are optional. Here I'm copying the scope from the configuration. If you want to read it from the configuration, you can do that as well, and I'm pasting it over here. Now let us define a model. Right click, add class, agent, member, history. I am adding one more class for deserializing the members API response. So here I'm adding a class, naming it as member, and going to the first API, going to the member class and copying these properties and going over here and pasting it over here. We have to add one more class, and this is the last model that we are going to add. I'm naming the class as agent member history response, and in this we'll have public member, member info, get set, and public list of agent member history. Press Ctrl dot over here, agent member history get set. Now in the agent member history class, here I'm adding few properties: public string, agent name, get set, public string, reason for call, get set, public date time, interaction date, get set. Press Ctrl dot and add the namespace. As we are not going to use entity framework here, I have hard-coded a list of objects, but in real time we have to get it from the database. Here I am writing private read-only I downstream web API. Press Ctrl dot and use this namespace underscore downstream web API. Now select this statement, press Ctrl dot and add the constructor. Here I am writing where member info is equal to underscore downstream web API dot. If you see here, we have many methods like get, put, and post. Here I want to use call web API for user async. You can use the other methods based on your requirement. I am expecting the output to be in member class format, so I'm writing member over here, and after that here we have to pass the service name, and we gave the service name in the startup.cs class as members API. I'm copying this and pasting it over here, and after that here I'm writing options, and we can pass an action over here. So here options dot relative path is equal to, here we have to give the relative path of our second API. So our controller name is members and the method name is getMemberInfo. I'm copying this and here I'm pasting it. So it should be members slash getMemberInfo, and after that here we have to pass member ID. So here I'm writing slash member ID. If you see on options, we have HTTP method property. If you want to mention the HTTP method, you can do that here. But our API is a get method and the default HTTP method is get. So I'm not mentioning anything over here. As this is an async method, we have to write await over here. And now here I'm writing return OK of new agent member history response, and inside this member info is equal to member info and agent member history is equal to, we have hard coded list over here and we are passing this. We need to add namespace for the task. Press Ctrl dot and add this namespace. We have to add roles to this endpoint, so here I'm writing authorize. Press Ctrl dot add this namespace, and here roles is equal to operations agent. I'm copying this and pasting it over here. Now we are going to access this API using Postman, and this API will call members API and return the response. Now here I am in app registrations, going into members API app and expose an API and removing this client application which is related to the Postman, because Postman is not the direct client now. Instead we are using operations agent API. Click here and click on delete. Delete. Even if we keep that over here, it won't impact anything. But as the Postman is not a direct client, I have removed that. Now go back to default directory, go to Operations Agent API app, expose an API, and here add client application. And here we have to mention our Postman app client ID, and we have the client ID over here. Now go over here and paste. Choose this scope, click on Add Application. Now run our API applications. I'm running the Members API, and here I'm running the Operations Agent API. We have to do the role assignments to the user on Operations Agent API app. So here I'm going to Enterprise Applications, and here we have Operations Agent API app. I'm clicking on Assign Users and Groups, Add User Group, and here I'm selecting Jessica. Select. So now this user have Operations Agent role on Operations Agent API app, and on the second app, that is Members API app, this user has members read-only permission. Click on Assign. Now let us test it with Postman. Here I have changed the URL from Members API to Operations Agent API, and here we have to change the scope to Operations Agent API scope. So here I am going into Operations Agent API app, and here we have the scope, and I am changing the scope over here. Remaining things stays as is. I'm clicking on Get New Access Token. It opened the browser. I'm pasting the username over here. Click on Next. Click on Sign In. Login is successful and it is asking to open Postman tool. And here we got the token. Click on Proceed. Use token. Let us test this. Clicking on Send button. It hit the first endpoint, so that means the authorization is successful over here. Now F10, it hit the second endpoint, that means the authorization is successful over here as well. Clicking on continue, and here also I'm clicking on continue. Here we got the response. That is all in this demo. If this video is helpful to you, please like this video and also subscribe to AzureTeach.net channel for more videos on Azure and .NET. Thank you.